Shame is not embarrassment. It is not guilt. It is a specific, intensely painful experience, one that researcher Brené Brown describes as the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. The key word is believing. Shame is not a response to a fact about you. It is a response to a story about you. A story that says your fundamental value as a human being is compromised by some quality, action, failure, or characteristic that, if known, would cost you acceptance and belonging. This is what makes shame different from guilt. Guilt is about behavior. I did something bad. Shame is about identity. I am bad. Guilt is connected to what you did and has a repair path. You can make amends, change the behavior, restore the relationship. Shame has no obvious repair path because the verdict is not about behavior. It is about who you are. Shame is also social in its architecture. It evolved as a mechanism for managing group belonging. In environments where social rejection was genuinely life-threatening, shame functioned as a brake on behavior that risked exclusion. This is why shame triggers the same threat response systems as physical danger. It is processed by the amygdala, not the prefrontal cortex. It speaks in sensation and urgency, not logic and reason, which is why it is so resistant to being thought through, because it is not primarily a cognitive experience. Understanding this architecture is the beginning of being able to work with shame rather than being worked by it. Shame is not innate. Infants do not experience shame, they experience distress, comfort, pleasure, and unease. But the complex self-evaluative experience of shame requires a level of cognitive development that is not present at birth. Shame develops, typically in the second and third years of life, as the child becomes capable of self-awareness and begins to understand that they are a separate person who can be evaluated by others. In a healthy developmental environment, shame is modulated by repair. The child does something the parent disapproves of. The parent responds with appropriate limit setting. The child experiences the discomfort of disapproval, and then, crucially, repair happens. The parent reconnects, warmth is restored, and the child learns that mistakes do not permanently damage relationships. Shame becomes proportionate, connected to specific actions, passing once the transgression is acknowledged and the relationship is repaired. In environments where repair does not reliably happen, where disapproval is prolonged, where emotional withdrawal is used as punishment, where the child's emotional expressions are met with contempt or dismissal, where conditional love creates the equation, I am acceptable when I perform correctly, shame becomes something else. It becomes pervasive. It becomes identity level. It becomes toxic shame. The felt sense that there is something fundamentally wrong with the self, regardless of behavior. The child in that environment cannot conclude, my environment is failing me. The cognitive and emotional cost of that conclusion is too high. So they conclude, I am the problem. That internalization protects the attachment and costs the self. And it is extraordinarily durable because it formed when the brain was most plastic and the people making the claim were the most authoritative voices in the world. In adult life, toxic shame operates primarily through a set of behavioral strategies designed to protect the self from the anticipated pain of exposure, from the feared moment when the real self will be seen and found unacceptable. The most common shame protection strategies include perfectionism, the attempt to be beyond criticism so the verdict cannot land; people-pleasing, the attempt to remain universally acceptable through continuous accommodation; emotional withdrawal, keeping relationships at a distance that prevents genuine knowing; anger, shame turned outward, attacking the source of the perceived judgment before it can wound; and numbing, the use of substances, behaviors, or distraction to reduce awareness of the underlying shame state. Each of these strategies works in the short term. They reduce the immediate discomfort. But each also maintains and often deepens the underlying shame because they prevent the corrective experiences that would challenge the shame story. The perfectionist never discovers that imperfection is survivable. The people pleaser never discovers that their real preferences are acceptable. The person who withdraws never discovers that being known does not inevitably lead to rejection. Shame also shapes what people believe they deserve, in relationships, in work, in their own inner lives. People carrying significant shame consistently underestimate their own contributions, overinvest in relationships that confirm their low view of themselves, and resist opportunities that seem too good for someone like them. The story shapes the choices, and the choices confirm the story. This feedback loop is one of the most important things to understand about how shame perpetuates itself across a lifetime. Shame lives in the body. This is not metaphor, it is physiology. The shame response involves a rapid activation of the threat detection system, particularly the amygdala and the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Heart rate changes, skin temperature fluctuates. The hot flush of shame is real and measurable. People make themselves physically smaller, hunching, looking down, reducing eye contact. There is often a collapse of the postural system, a pulling inward, a wish to be invisible. Because shame is held in the body in this way, approaches to healing that work only at the cognitive level, thinking differently about yourself, challenging the story intellectually, are often insufficient on their own. The body is still carrying the old patterns even when the mind has begun to update. This is why somatic approaches to shame work, therapies that work with the body's held patterns directly, including EMDR, somatic experiencing, and body-oriented therapies, often reach places that purely cognitive approaches cannot. It is also why simple physical regulation, moving the body, changing posture deliberately, engaging the parasympathetic nervous system through breath, can be genuinely helpful in the acute phase of a shame response. Not as a cure, but as an interruption, a way of signaling safety to the nervous system, creating just enough space between the trigger and the shame spiral to engage with it differently. And it is why the experience of being held warmly, literally, by another human being, in friendship, in partnership, in therapeutic contexts, has a shame-reducing effect that no amount of cognitive reframing fully replicates. The body knows safety, and it is in embodied safety that healing most deeply occurs. The research on shame healing is consistent. What works is not logic, not self-help books read in isolation, not willing yourself to feel differently. What works is a combination of internal and relational practices that together begin to loosen shame's grip on identity and behavior. Internally, the practice of self-compassion, treating yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and patience you would extend to a close friend in difficulty, is the most consistently supported intervention. Kristin Neff's research shows that self-compassion is not self-indulgence. It is not lowering your standards or avoiding accountability. It is the specific practice of interrupting the shame spiral at the identity level, of refusing to conclude from a mistake or a struggle that you are fundamentally inadequate, and replacing that conclusion with the recognition that imperfection and struggle are universal human experiences that do not define your worth. Relationally, the practice of vulnerability, of allowing yourself to be seen incrementally in safe contexts, and of discovering that being seen does not inevitably lead to rejection, is the primary vehicle through which the shame story gets challenged and updated. This requires real relationships, not performing openness, but genuinely allowing someone who has earned that trust to see something true. The response, when the relationship is safe enough, interrupts the shame prediction. Over time, with repetition, that interruption compounds. Therapeutic support, particularly modalities that work with the developmental roots of shame, with the body's held patterns, and with the relational history, significantly accelerates this process for people whose shame is rooted in early chronic wounding. Seeking that support is not a failure. It is a form of taking your own healing seriously. What does life look like when shame is no longer the primary organizing principle of your inner world? People who have done significant shame work describe a set of changes that are, in some ways, quietly revolutionary. They describe being less exhausted because managing, performing, and hiding are extraordinarily energy-intensive. And as those behaviors reduce, something opens up. They describe being more present in their relationships, less preoccupied with managing perception, more genuinely curious about and available to the people in their lives. They describe making decisions from preference rather than fear, pursuing what interests them rather than only what is safe or impressive or guaranteed to avoid judgment. They describe, perhaps most consistently, a gradual reduction in the background noise, the hum of not quite enoughness that had been present so long they had stopped noticing it as anything other than their personality. Its quieting is often what they notice most. None of this is achieved permanently or completely. Shame responses still arrive. Old patterns still activate. The process is not linear, but the quality of the relationship with those responses changes, from being swept into them to noticing them, naming them, working with them, returning to yourself more quickly. The invitation of this series and of this video is not to have healed by now. It is to begin, to start questioning the verdict, to take one small step toward being a little more seen, to practice once responding to your own difficulty with something closer to kindness than judgment. That is enough for today, and today, done enough times, is how the story changes.